joining us today for what will be a very informative session. I'm excited to have our panelists here. My name is Rachel Sapoznik. I am President and CEO of Sapoznik Insurance, a world insurance company. We have 3 experts that will be joining us and helping us really maneuver for what we are now calling business interrupted, staying ahead of the curve in the race for talent. I would like to start with our first guest, Adam Kemper. Adam, give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you're seeing out there.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us. We're certainly here at a very interesting time for HR and employment law. I'm a labor and employment law attorney with the law firm of Kelley Kronenberg, and I specialize in 2 components of labor and employment law. The first is workplace consulting and compliance, where I assist HR professionals and C-level executives on all things in the workplace, from hiring to firing and just about everything in between. My goal with my clients is to keep them in compliance and to keep them out of the courtroom. And the second component is workplace litigation, where I assist companies with workplace lawsuits, audits, investigations, internal and external, with the goal of minimizing business disruption, stress and expense, and maximizing the ultimate result for our clients. I have over 10 years of experience in dealing with workplace legal matters, beginning my career at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, investigating workplace discrimination matters on behalf of the government, before shifting gears to representing claimants in employment law matters for about 2.5 years, and then switching over for the last 9 or so years, representing companies in employment matters. So I do bring a unique perspective to workplace law and some of the HR discussions that we're having here, and looking at these matters from the governmental perspective, from the perspective of a claimant, and also from the perspective of the company. So look forward to sharing my insights this morning, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Adam. Erin Crider, I love your title, Chief of Staff for LifeSci Search. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I'm Chief of Staff at LifeSci. My background has about a decade of experience in talent acquisition, recruitment, and sourcing strategies. So I've been deep in the weeds for many years now when it comes to the race for talent and how to position companies attractively in competitive markets. I'm very specialized in startup and hypergrowth companies. So I've been working with companies that are quickly scaling from just a few folks all the way up to hundreds of thousands over the course of my career. So I really am passionate about how to help position companies in a way that is going to be attractive, competitive, and really help bring a compelling story to the table.
Diane Dooley, our own corporate HR officer for World Insurance.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to everyone for participating in today's event. I'm excited to learn a lot and learn from all of you as well. A little bit about my background. I am the CHRO at World Insurance. I recently joined the organization a few months ago. I started my career in public accounting, and I worked in public accounting for a number of years, and then worked in the Big Four for about 12 or 13 years, and really began to understand the intricacies of working with employees on a regular basis. It gave me the insights to really expand performance evaluations, turnover, change management. And I was leading talent acquisition for those 12 years throughout Deloitte and Ernst & Young. I then migrated my career towards the private equity space. And so I've now worked with 4 private equity portfolio companies. And that's a lot of change management on a regular basis. It's something that you kind of get used to, recognizing in that world that through growth and through change, we have the opportunity to advance and continue that growth. The last thing I did also was I did take off for 8 years and was a mom. So in my career, I really had that split, and that was a different point in my life. And so I was a returnee to the job market. So I knew a lot of challenges in doing that, but overall it was just great. And there is no stopping when you're really pretty committed. So I'm happy to be here again. And thank you, Rachel and team, for the invitation.
Great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And my first question is going to be for Erin and Diane. More than half of the employees are now concerned with their well-being. That is actually hurting companies. What are some of the impacts of turnover and what recommendations do you have to reduce attrition?
Yeah, I can take that. I'll get that a start. I think, first of all, it is important to recognize whether you have voluntary or involuntary turnover. It's important to understand that either way, both paint a picture and both tell a story about what's really going on in your company. And it's something to pay attention to. I do believe that turnover can be healthy for an organization as long as it's on the lower single digits. When you start getting into high double digits, it's problematic. But organizations are changing every day in order to meet the client needs, the economic requirements, the compliance to state and federal laws. And therefore, it's something we have to be mindful of. But keep in mind, if an employee isn't performing well, review your hiring protocols, look at your training programs. If you're losing employees to the competitors, assess your programs, your managers, and look at your compensation model. It is definitely a race for talent out there. But it's certainly something that we want to monitor and measure on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I can agree more, Diane. I think it's really important that we look at, the reasons behind, excuse me, why these attrition rates do increase, and we do put strong procedures in place to help support new employees as they do enter organizations and set them up to be successful long term. I think one of the big things to be mindful of when you are having rapid turnovers really does affect your company's morale, productivity, and the buy-in of the existing staff that are left behind. So you want to make sure you're staying close to those people as well, and you're really managing the message of turnover when it does happen, whether voluntary or involuntary. So you are setting up the rest of your team to be successful and feel stable and bought in as they move forward as well.
It's a perfect segue to our next question. When employees feel cared for, they are more likely to engage in helping with recruitment and retention. What are the warning signs of employees leaving, and what are the common causes of employee turnover?
Yeah, I can kind of continue on with my train of thought from that conversation, Rachel. Like you said, it's a perfect segue. When employees start to be unsatisfied in the market, that's usually when folks like myself enter the game. We start to have conversations with people, and it's very common. You see the same patterns of behavior. People start to disengage. There's a drop in productivity. There's shifts in attitude. There's usually an increase in changes to scheduling or increased requests for time off. Oftentimes we'll see conflict across team members and with management that may not have been there before. And usually this is stemming from multiple causes for employees. It could be something as simple as they're feeling frustrated by lack of access to opportunity. They're feeling that there's been an inequality on the teams or within their position, or it could be something entirely unrelated to the business, something going on at home that's leading to this dissatisfaction. So when I'm talking to candidates as a recruiter, but also within my own employee sphere, we're really careful about making sure that we're always probing for all the different kind of elements going on within their life, is looking at the whole work-life balance to make sure that they are getting the support. And we're always being mindful of what might be triggering them to make a move or look elsewhere in the market.
Yeah, and I would like to add what Erin is saying as well. I think it's important to study the employee behavior. Look and see what's going on. There's usually two key factors: satisfaction and engagement. So monitor these areas, and you'll begin to determine who your at-risk employees are. When you have low satisfaction, you can begin to see a mental separation. Slowly, employees are kind of pulling away. We often hear that people will leave managers, which is very true. So observe how your employees are engaging with their managers. Are they satisfied with their managers? Are they satisfied with the company? If you have low engagement and low satisfaction, your employee is likely ready to start separating. So what is important is to keep in mind that you have an XY axis, and you really try to determine on a plotting graph where your employee might fit. A lot of times we do in calibration meetings, we kind of get a sense when we're doing performance management as well. So are they high or are they low? Excuse me. I think the last thing is to look at your compensation philosophy. And that's often a different word for people. They'll be along the lines of, well, we have comp, we have base, we have salary, but look at your philosophy. You want to be at market, you want to be competitive and treat your employees equitably. Don't look for the bargain when hiring employees. Pay your employees what they're worth, and they'll return that. So always be mindful of what the market looks like on that.
Adam, I see you shaking your head. So what are your thoughts here?
Well, I mean, both Erin and Diane are just spot on with their analysis on this. And, I think engagement is really the key issue here. And when you begin to see employees become disengaged, they feel removed from the company. They don't feel like they're a part of a team. They're watching the clock. They're waiting until 5 o'clock turns, and they're not exercising any discretionary effort as well. So you're seeing the bare minimum from employees, and you're seeing productivity begin to lull. And what I see in my world is disengaged employees are often the ones that leave either voluntarily or involuntarily. And they're also the ones that go talk to plaintiff employment attorneys about how terrible the working environment is, and how it's a hostile place, and how they want to bring claims against the company. So engagement really is a key indicator here, and effective engagement could be the difference maker as well.
Great. Flexibility is here to stay, but it will require creative solutions to foster collaboration and manage workloads. What trends are you seeing in recruiting, and what are the sourcing strategies have you found that affect today's climate? Erin?
Yeah, great question, Rachel. Now more than ever, the market is extremely competitive. It's what we call a candidate-driven market. We have not seen it this difficult to hire and maintain employees in easily the last 5 to 8 years. So for many of us, we're walking through kind of uncharted waters as far as how to get the right caliber of talent through our doors in order to meet the supply needs of our businesses. I'm encouraging all of my clients that I work with to execute multi-pronged sourcing strategies when they're working in the market. And really at the heart of that, making sure that they're trying to build real personal connections with candidates before they need them. So we're really going back to what we call old school recruiting, active personal direct networking. It doesn't work anymore just to put a job post out on a job board or to send a LinkedIn network connection and hope that that person wants to work for you. You need to build real relationships, because even if you do find that right candidate, chances are they're probably going to be getting offers from 3, 4, 5 other companies at the same time as you. So you need to differentiate yourself. And part of that also goes to making sure that your company has a really strong brand identity and a really great company culture. People want to work for organizations that they know, that they feel connected to, and that they can see themselves working in and fitting into the general feel of the organization as well. So I tell people, invest in strong recruitment strategies, invest in strong marketing strategies, and utilize both of those as part of your overall sourcing methodology. And when in doubt, reach out to someone like myself. That's what we're here for, is to help guide you and put together a talent acquisition plan that'll help make sure that you're successful.
Yeah, if I could add one piece to that too, and I think Erin's right on spot there. The other key thing is really, it's all about speed right now. And it's about modifying some of perhaps our recruiting techniques. So we're finding that our candidates want to be texted. And that's an interesting mindset, because typically recruiters don't always text our employee or candidates. So keep in mind speed, no different than the housing market. Their houses are coming on the market and going off within a day. The same thing is happening with our candidate pool. So keep that in mind when you're looking to hire, and keep those hiring managers moving things along.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Adam, employees are concerned with safety, and their employer plays a greater role in this. So having said that, how do companies' decision around the vaccine affect culture?
I mean, this is the major question that we're seeing make headlines every single day when we turn on the news. We're seeing protests, we're seeing mass resignation events, we're seeing word about the White House coming out with a potential mandate any day from OSHA, which is the governing agency, which oversees safety within the workplace. So the answer is there is not a one size fits all that works for every company. It really is case specific. We really have to go in and look at the makeup of the company itself. What does the company do? What do its employees do? Do the employees engage with other people? Are they at a high risk of exposure, not only based on what they do, but based on where they're located as well? So it does take a little bit of an analysis to decide, what safety protocols do we need to implement? What are recommended? What are mandated by law? And all of that takes some careful consulting with not only someone like myself, but also consultants that are knowledgeable in these areas. So safety is certainly a major concern, but decision making around this could be the making or breaking of a mass resignation event, and that's why it's just so important for employers to really get a survey from their employees on what they want, what they're interested in, and what might send them out of the door by losing them through something that's overbearing on them. So it's really critical to engage with your employees on these subjects and understand what their interests are.
So to follow up on that question, how should a company prepare for the OSHA rules with regards to the vaccine? And how will the penalties for noncompliance, which seem to be about $14,000, how are companies really going to prepare for this?
So I think it's a major mistake for companies to wait till the very last moment to wait until they're ordered by the government to begin to consider some of these initiatives or consider what's in the pipeline. I think at the very least, if companies have not already instituted their own mandate, which is permissible, they should at least survey their employees to find out who is vaccinated, who is not. What are employees' interests around this? How do they feel about the mandate? Maybe bring in a medical practitioner to just give some guidelines around the vaccine itself, to provide some educational opportunities for employees. Because with this OSHA mandate, which is right now sitting in the White House waiting to be finalized, it's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when it comes out. And certainly there will be pushback. Certainly there's going to be some major blowback, but don't make that happen in your workplace. I think you should begin to have these discussions, if not yesterday, then today, with your employees, to let them know what's coming. Let them know that there is a mandate, but you're looking into opportunities for things like weekly testing, if that's more viable for the company. Because yes, as you point out, Rachel, there will be penalties, and I believe that the penalties will be pretty high, because for two reasons. Number one, the government's in a deficit. That's a way for the government to bring back some money. And number two, OSHA does not have the resources to send its own investigators to every workplace in America to see that they're in compliance. So there needs to be a high penalty there to be there to deter non-compliance, and also to be forceful if there is, a company out of compliance. So I think the key takeaway with this is educate your employees now. Get a read on how they'll react to this, and begin to take the steps to that you need to be in compliance with what is forthcoming by consulting with someone like me, having an understanding of what is expected, and then begin to prepare for what is coming.
Diane, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I think what Adam is saying is 100% accurate. Get ahead of it, right? Tough to manage through, because there's many different political views on this. And so company leaders are taking every effort to really ensure that we're hearing our employees, we're listening to them, we're compliant with government requirements and laws, and somewhere in the middle, make some decisions for the organization to really support the initiatives and support our employees. So keep in mind that we are being very mindful on a daily basis as to what action is going to take. But I completely agree with Adam. Get ahead of it and start a plan and a strategy.
Diane, with all your experience in human resources, employees have different motivations for working hard and remaining dedicated to a company. The employee experience has now become a focal point for growing companies. What incentives are you or employers offering to separate your company from the competition?
Yeah, that's so pertinent today, right? Because we as employers have to be flexible and resilient. A key difference in today's marketplace is the ability to work remote. We've all learned in the last year, yes, many companies have had the technological advancements in order to work remote, but not every role and not every position people can work remote. And so as employers, again, we're juggling to say, how can we support our employees while they may be out of their comfort zones? So one of the things that we have taken on at World is to really identify individual case-by-case situations as needed and work and provide for our employees an individual plan for working remote. We have moved to a hybrid situation versus always being in the office, but that is one very, very important resource that we have provided for our employees. But again, not every role can be remote. So it's about knowing your organization, determining which roles can be, and then moving forward to support your employees along the way.
Erin, as a high-end recruiter, especially in the C-suite, what are you seeing works on the incentive side?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can add to the benefits package to help just kind of sweeten the pot, so to speak, and differentiate your offer, especially when you're up against multiples. And this goes for all levels of hiring, not just executive and senior leadership. Even things like more generous or flexible PTO packages, flexible scheduling, even for folks that are in office, if it does allow them to maybe you drop off for kiddos in the morning or pickups in the afternoon, things like that do make a really big difference. Looking at, offering paid maternity and paternity leave packages has been a huge differentiator in the market. Not all states and all cities do offer that as part of their requirements. That's been a really big one we've been seeing make a big difference for many people. Even things like ongoing education reimbursement opportunities for not just self, but also for family members. Can be, a big deal. And even little things like offering pet insurance packages can also help, buy in or make the difference when someone is making a decision. So I always encourage my clients to really look at their benefits packages from a holistic level, even do like pulse surveys like what Adam has mentioned for other matters to see what really matters to your people. It's about really knowing what works for your business, what works for the people that work within your organization, and trying to craft a package that is both affordable for you as a business, but is also going to allow your employees to get the maximum benefit out of it, which is the whole point, is how can we make their lives just a little bit better and make our offering just a little bit more attractive to them in today's market.
Right. So this is for the three of you. There is a demand for a greater work-life balance. Diane, you actually took off to have your baby and we're out for 8 years, so you can relate to this. As companies really deal with this, what are the pros and cons of remote work and the interplay as employees seem to be engaged or not engaged while they're at home? How do we deal with this?
Well, I think if I can jump in on that a little bit off of what I was saying earlier, first of all, it's understanding your workforce. If you understand your workforce and you understand the roles and responsibilities, which is critical of your workforce, it will help you to set a strategy in place. And I'm reminded of Yahoo. About 15 years ago, Yahoo pulled everybody and they said, you know what, we're going to let you work from home. But then what happened is Google stepped in and gained market share. And Yahoo started to lose market share because they lost the creativity of the water cooler talk, right? And so all of a sudden, Yahoo, then the CEO of Yahoo at the time said, we need to bring everybody back, right? And so as we're working in this remote environment, we cannot forget that water cooler talk or that conversation is important. And we do want to be reminded that how do we retain that? So some of the pros and the cons of working remote, sometimes you lose that, right? That's a con. Some of the pros, obviously a little bit more flexibility for the individual employee. I can share when I was remote and when I took off for 8 years, it was the best thing I ever did. It was also very difficult to come back into the workforce, and it took me some time. So I would encourage that if you're hiring returnees to the market, to give them a little bit of time, and they will do what they can. But overall, it's a great opportunity to be remote, to work remote, and to have that flexibility.
Yeah, that's a great point, Diane. Just to add to that, I mean, our team here at LifeSci, we're entirely remotely distributed as well across the US and Europe. And our team works extremely well in a remote environment because our jobs do allow for that. We've also had to really adjust how we're managing. So we're always looking to manage to outcomes, not to hours. I think it's really important when you are working with remote employees that, like what Diane was saying, there's a lot of clarity around responsibility and expectation for each role and for each person. And that line of conversation between management and employee is open. We've actually put in place a couple of performance management systems within our business over the last year to help improve those feedback loops, as we call them, and make it really easy for everyone to stay engaged and involved. The other thing I do want to bring attention to when you are looking at a remote workforce is making sure that you're really focusing as leaders on creating an equitable environment and access to both promotions, opportunities, training, and development, it's really easy to let employees fall by the wayside, especially those that may not be naturally more outspoken or more comfortable asking for what they need. So really keeping in mind that when people are working remote, they may be coming from very different environments, backgrounds, and needs at home that could be impacting how they do show up at work. So again, keeping it personal, getting to know your people and being really mindful of that as you're managing and developing your workforce in a remote setting is going to be critical to success.
Those are some wonderful points. And of course, we can't have a HR conference without talking about millennials. Millennials certainly are making up, as of today, 35% of the workforce. And in the next 5 years globally, that number will increase to as much as 75%. And in 2030, nationally, it'll be 75%. So what do millennials want? Millennials want a work-life balance. They want to work remotely. They want, fair compensation. They want to work on things like that have a social impact. That's not to say make the entire company remote indefinitely, but we do have to take into consideration what is the makeup of the workforce. And not every workforce has all millennials, but the data is showing that the millennial demographic will be increasing in every workforce, based on a number of studies. So I think we need to take that into account. I think we need to continue to manage expectations. That's one thing that I talk about with HR professionals and managers, is that regardless of where employees are working, the expectations are the same, that performance will be done, that there will be engagement as well, that we can't overlook engagement just because people are working remotely, and that working remotely does not work for everybody. That's one thing we need to be mindful of as well, that some people are extroverted and they need to be around people to best perform, and they need that water cooler talk, whereas others do not. Others are more introverted, maybe do not need that. So we need to understand that people are made up differently, that we can't have a rigid all or nothing policy, and that flexibility and mindfulness of who our employees are and what they're made up of is really the key here. It'll be interesting to see how the next few years play out, but I anticipate we're going to continue to see a shift to more and more remote work over the next few years.
Which really brings me to my next question. According to PwC, half of the employees would prefer to work remotely 3 days a week. However, the executive team feels that they should be at work 3 days a week. How do you deal with the leadership when they do not believe in a remote workforce?
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that. And it's a great question, because I think the key is the word leadership, right? And our leaders in most organizations, you'll find they're pretty smart people. They listen to what's going on. They're aware of trends. They're aware of market conditions. They do a lot of reading and they understand. However, they are also challenged because financially they're worried about meeting their numbers and their requirements. So as HR professionals, I think the key really is to be able to influence our leaders, to show them the benefits, and to really be able to quantify it in analytics and HR analytics. And so it's sometimes hard, right? So we look at our performance management systems. And it's interesting that it was PwC that had put that out, because when I worked for Deloitte Ernst & Young 20 years ago, I was on a remote working situation. I went back being a mom and still worked. And they gave me that flexibility. So they implemented the right protocols to support hiring people that were and could work in remote environments. And they hired really smart people, and they had tremendous performance management systems in place in order to ensure that our employee populations were in fact working, because productivity could not slip because people were working remotely. And that's where the leaders get a little concerned. They want to make sure and ensure that people are in fact working. So again, as HR professionals, it's incumbent on us to ensure that the leaders have the information that they need, understand the business case that supports somebody from working from home, and ensure that productivity doesn't slip.
If I can just add one thing to that, the terminology that I would like to use with leadership is business case, because that's often something that resonates with them. They want to understand how they can save money or make more money. And I think you really need to gather the data on things like employee retention and turnover, some of the costs attributed to that, coupled with the data around what the employees actually want in terms of remote working or working in the office. And then building a business case. Does it make sense financially based on some of the analytics to have a full remote working environment, or having a hybrid or some combination, or does it make sense to keep everybody in the office? And the answer is going to be different for a number of companies based on those analytics. So that's really what, in my experience, what resonates with leadership is the numbers.
Erin, would you like to add anything here?
No, I think Diane and Adam are spot on. I think the biggest thing too is about quantifying the data, utilizing those numbers to help paint a picture for leadership when it comes to the impact. I mean, obviously executives are focused on bottom line always, but they do value the people that work for them, and they do understand the impact of what that can mean for them as well. So it's, part of our responsibility is how to paint that picture in a way that they understand it's going to make sense to them, but we're also advocating for the needs of the people that work within our businesses.
So Adam, a sticky area is the vaccine. What happens to the employee who tells their employer, who has a mandate, that they will not get the vaccine?
So, obviously we have a permission slip by the government, and courts have been very deferential to employers in enforcing vaccine mandates. Even if it results in an employee losing his or her job, subject to 3 legal exceptions. And those legal exceptions are built around someone with a medical issue, which constitutes a disability under the ADA, someone with a sincerely held religious belief as recognized by Title VII, or someone who is pregnant. So if people identify those exemptions, you have to at the very least go through this interactive process of identifying whether there's an accommodation available for these workers in lieu of taking the vaccine. So you can't have really an all or nothing vaccine mandate without looking at those legal exceptions. But if you have those in place and you're complying with the exceptions, and then you have this demographic of workers, which I've seen throughout the country, that do not fall within one of those exceptions, but for personal reasons do not want to get the vaccine. The question then becomes, does it make sense for the company to terminate these workers? Are they going to lose talent? What does that say about the company culture? Does that result in other people leaving? Because one thing we all have to keep in mind is that there is an intangible factor to losing employees. An example I gave at a recent conference is, if you have a hard and fast line rule around this, and you may end up losing a worker that, let's say, has a relationship with another worker that they've been working very well together for a long time. Yes, you may only have to deal with the turnover cost of that one worker, but you lose that camaraderie, you lose the relationship that the workers have with each other, and that can result in other people leaving as well. That can result in productivity going down. So there's not an easy answer to this. It really does take a deep dive into not only the law, but company culture, some of the relationships that you have deeply entrenched within the company, and whether or not having a hard and fast rule is in the best interest of the company. So I can tell you that I'm working behind the scenes with a number of companies on this right now, and one answer is not the same as the next, other than what the law says. The law is clear, but what works for one company may not work for the other. So it really does take some time to sit down and analyze what is in the best interest of your company.
I just want to make a comment to our guests. If you have questions, please use the chat, because we will be going to questions shortly. And I've already gotten a few really good questions. So just as a reminder. Okay. According to a recent poll by the Gallup, 85% of employees are not engaged in the workplace. What strategies are you using to increase employee engagement, such as upskilling, cross-training, onboarding? What's working?
You know, it's interesting, Rachel. I've always been of the mindset that engagement really starts with the employee, and it starts with knowing what motivates them. I'm an executive coach, and I've coached many professionals at all different levels of life coaching and executive coaching. And I have loved the terminology, quote unquote, coachable. And the question is, are your employees coachable? Because what you'll find is the individuals that are coachable are the ones who are often the most engaged. And if someone is not coachable, take note of that. See how you can perhaps support them, educate them, train them on that initiative and on that one particular attribute in and of itself. And I'll share a quick story. I have 3 children, 2 of which were athletes. And my one son was a very big athlete. And he was a soccer player. He was so good that he ended up moving on, going to the Naval Academy, right? Because he got recruited. He was coachable. My daughter was a softball pitcher. She pitched 65 miles an hour, which is unheard of for a softball. She was not coachable. She failed and stopped coaching. She could have had a full scholarship. Colleges were trying to recruit her and she walked away. She was not coachable. So identify sometimes who's coachable and who's not coachable and see how you can help them and support them. Of course, fast forward, she's been educated and trained. She's now coachable. So I'm happy to say, but keep in mind that sometimes people are just not aware of it. So if you kind of get an idea, look at what's going on, see who's at risk again, and then you want to cross-train, upskill, and onboard that type of personality and that type of person, an employee, you'll have an amazing organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Diane, with, that really putting that back onto knowing your people, identifying what works, and then creating programs within your business to help encourage more interactions with those type of individuals. Within our business, we've done a really great job of creating these mentor-mentee relationships across division lines to allow people to build stronger relationships, get that personal tie, but also start to develop skills out of areas that they may not normally in their day-to-day engagement. And the other thing too is you can make this easy for yourself. There's really incredible systems out there in technology today to make this something that you can implement that kind of self-guides you in your business. As leadership, as HR, you can basically implement it annually, work with leaders to identify what they want to see within the business, and then create these tooling paths through the course of the year that basically self-run. And most people, especially the millennial workforce, love it. They love technology and they love things that are easy. So it really helps enable companies and employees to be more involved. And that does start with onboarding day one too. If you have a good process from day one, it's going to reflect all the way through. So spending time creating the right sort of procedures that are going to work for your business and work for the people that work for you.
You are seeing that technology when it comes to coaching could be very beneficial, not only for the C-suite, but all the way through from management to onboarding staffing as a protocol for growth within the company.
Absolutely. If you make it easy for people, they're way more inclined to utilize it. If you are expecting managers to host, one-on-one or even, even peer-to-peer reviews, just on their own on a quarterly or even annual basis, and you just kind of leave it up to them to do, it's probably not going to happen. Or HR is going to spend a lot of time running around trying to get people to get things done. But if you invest in a system that automatically pings people, it sends emails, sends reminders, it's a quick 5-8 questions, people are going to go ahead and engage in that. One of the systems we've implemented in our business actually allows for a full live loop chat within managers and team members. Team members can leave messages for each other all the way down. So it's a fully matrixed environment, and it's really a neat system that lets our company work a lot more smoothly and ensure that those elements are happening when otherwise it's a lot of, like I said, running around trying to get things done, and people just don't respond well to that usually.
So while we're dealing with coaching, we're also dealing with employee fatigue, burnout, the impact it has on the organization. Many of us are working from home. We're Zooming all day long. We have no boundaries. There are no borders. We're going from one session to the next. Many times not even having time for lunch or personal activities. So how do we deal with this?
I was actually going to comment on the last topic, but there's an interplay between what I was going to say before and this same subject. So a lot of people are doing too much engagement, or in their mind, engagement by, calling me and complaining that their employees are quitting. And they're saying, well, I engaged with the worker. I had them come in every weekend. And I said, well, that's just extra work. That's not necessarily engagement, and maybe that's not the best fit for that employee. And a lot of employees look at too much engagement as being overbearing, as being a form of micromanaging. So, more is not always better with engagement, and it can lead to things like employee burnout and fatigue. Because as we've all witnessed over the last 18 to 20 months in dealing with this pandemic, is that there's been little to no separation between the work and home balance, where we've been working from home and juggling between personal responsibilities and work as well. And people haven't taken a real vacation during this whole time. So we just need to be mindful that, yes, we want employees to stay, because employees that leave end up, more often than not, creating problems for the company, both financially and potentially with lawsuits. But we don't want to be overbearing. We do want to give employees an opportunity to breathe, take real vacations, get away, not just have another place to continue doing work, like actually to disconnect, because you're going to see better productivity with workers if they do have an opportunity to disconnect, and you're going to see greater retention as well.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that as well. And thank you for that, Adam. When we're looking at the employees, right, this is a real issue. This is systemic, and it's not just your company or my company, it's every company. So this is something we're all feeling. And the question is, as HR professionals, how can we support them? And I'd like to just sometimes make small recommendations, find ways to have fun, find ways to sit down and say, hey, can you have coffee with me tomorrow morning over Zoom or whatever you might want, but have coffee and just literally just have coffee and talk to somebody, but put it on your calendar. And again, going back to that water cooler talk, kind of what we need sometimes we need to get out of ourselves. We're in our own little world, our own little homes, or whatever we're finding. And you really want to try something different. Put games on the calendar. They have various games that the internet is really throwing out to communities. We did one that was, for instance, was a escape room and a mystery on the calendar. So have fun with your employees and ask your managers to put that time on the calendar. Have cocktails on the calendar, or just whatever it might be. Those little things, again, help find engagement, and it reduces burnout for sure.
Yeah, I to piggyback on with Adam and Diane, I couldn't agree with more with both those points. And really to Diane's point about having fun with your employees, and also a couple off of Adam's of not doing too much. Do those things during business hours. Do it when you're already engaged with your employees. Don't ask them to work late to do a happy hour. Don't ask them to come in on a Saturday to go do a company event, unless your team wants that, unless your team is saying, yes, let's spend extra time outside of work together, because that can be seen, especially in today's environment, as just one more thing they need to do in balance in addition to their other lives at home. Something that we've seen a lot of with kind of the burnout and the fatigue is there's just a lack of boundaries. A lot of our team members are finding haven't learned how to set boundaries in a remote working environment. For many of them, this is their first time ever working in a position like this. So part of it with leadership is teaching and modeling that behavior. I do a lot of work with our executives on really helping them also disengage, take actual unplugged PTO, trusting that the teams that they've hired are capable of doing the job without them. So really modeling what we want to see our employees do for us in return. I, for example, was gone for part of last week, and I didn't turn my cell phone on once, and it was wonderful. And you know what? The company did not burn down, and it ran just fine without me. So, part of this is really just learning to trust your teams, and really help encourage them how to build the skills that they need. There's some great resources online, even free resources online, about how to set boundaries in the workforce, how to do time blocking and scheduling to make sure that you are taking your lunches, you're taking your dog out for their afternoon walk, whatever it may be that you need to make sure you're doing so your mental wellness stays intact. So that's a big part of working in a remote environment, is you can really tax yourself mentally and emotionally when you're not making time for yourself. So teaching your employees how to do that and making that part of their learning and engagement has been a really big deal for both our business as well as many of the clients that we work with.
Which brings us to our last question. Company culture has never been more important, as evidenced by your comments. However, we're also looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. How are we, as organizations, as company, how are we addressing this? And what are the things that are effective to really bring in those individuals that are really dealing with situations such as taking care of their parents, elderly parents, or dealing with sick children? How do we bring in the DEI into our organization?
Yeah, it's interesting. A key thing is respect in the workplace is probably more important now than ever. And understanding DEI is very diverse. We often know as DEI as diversity, ethnicity, inclusion, whether that ethnicity or diversity is race, gender preferences, physical disabilities, but that could also be political views. And a lot of the conversation today was about vaccinations, and it's respecting someone else's personal choices. And so I think it's important to, first of all, have a culture that supports that individual thought and allows people to have that. Now, of course, some conversations don't belong at the workforce. That's something that you can manage through. At World, we have recently hired a director of learning and development to start to roll out more programs on ethnicity, more programs on diversity, more programs as it relates to ensuring that our employees are fully aware of what's going on. And the more that we can support them in that way is pretty critical. But to your point, Rachel, very, very important impact on culture. And it's through education and learning that we can continue to get the word out on that.
My number one recommendation is to actually have a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce before you begin to put those things on paper and begin to recruit as if you're a diverse workforce, because you're going to lose instant credibility when you start trying to hire people of diversity and saying, hey, we have a very diverse workforce. Take a look around. There's 50 Caucasian males under 40. You're going to lose credibility. People aren't going to buy it. I see it play out in lawsuits where people say, oh, we're an equal employment opportunity employer. And then you actually take a look around and you're not. So I think you actually need to put the plan into action, put the initiatives into action before you can begin calling yourself an inclusive or diverse employer, and start to build up that real authentic credibility. And it does take, and you can engage your employees on this. You can make your employees a part of this initiative. But that would be my number one recommendation about that.
Yeah, I just piggyback slightly on Adam's comment there. Really starting DEI in recruitment is critical. So creating an inclusive recruiting strategy that's going to allow you to recruit from a diverse background of experiences. Make sure you're not always hiring people from the same college or from the same area or environment. So looking to make sure that really your approach is truly equitable. There are experts that just do just DEI, and they're fantastic investments for any business. I recommend it to every single one of my clients if they don't have someone in place who's already doing that, to make sure these programs are set up to be successful from the start. It's not enough just to say, okay, we're going to make sure that our applicants are of a diverse background, or we're interviewing a diverse background. You need to be intentional with the action and create a very clear strategy to ensure that from the start, who you're approaching, who you're targeting is going to allow you to have the right window of individuals to, again, bring that diversity of background into your business, which will do nothing but strengthen your team's long-term.
That also brings you to the idea of benefits. Employee benefits used to be health insurance, life insurance, disability, dental. But now we're looking at a full package of benefits that are different than what we're traditionally used to. So, for instance, same-sex marriages, having babies during this time. Are we providing paternity insurance that's covered, paid paternity? Are we looking at that? How are we looking at mental health? Traditional insurances were very limited when it came to mental health benefits. Are we expanding our EAP program, really giving employees access to additional mental health? Females, just the way it is, 29% of all critical care issues that are happening at home are being taken care of by the women. Are we giving them support, financial support? So when you're looking at your employee benefits program, you want to take a look at, are you thinking outside the box? Are you giving your employees things that they need, such as financial wellness, such as maybe, as you said, Erin, before, pet insurance, expanded mental health benefits? We need to look and really break down what's happening in our society and be able to help our employees so that they do see that they're working for a company that cares. We've got some really good questions. We have a few more minutes left with the panel, so I'm going to go ahead and I think this is such a great question, especially for the non-for-profit world. In the not-for-profit organizations, volunteers are also experiencing burnout. What education can HR, legal advisors, and insurance companies share to assist CEOs as they work with volunteers and leadership? So anyone want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I'm very involved in not-for-profit organizations and work with the executive director and leaders. And again, same concept of putting a program in place for your volunteer programs. Very similar, can be somewhat similar to your employee programs, but having a very specific policy as it relates to timing, as it relates to offerings, as it relates to benefits for the volunteers, I think that's a critical piece. It's a great question because a lot of the not-for-profits are experiencing those challenges. And it also goes to really a lot of times some of the not-for-profits having a role as a liaison, inserting one of your either directors or someone as a liaison to support the initiatives with the volunteers. Sometimes they have a volunteer manager or something along those lines, but having policies in place is really accretive for your volunteers, for your not-for-profit organizations.
The only thing I would add to that is that, just utilizing mindfulness, just being aware that these are volunteers, that these people are taking time out of their day, and that we're all experiencing burnout in various capacities. So maybe we need to kind of tinker back our expectations of what a volunteer will do with his or her time. And then just to continue to show gratitude and appreciation for the volunteers and make your organization that much more welcoming to additional volunteers.
As a volunteer to many organizations, I would also include that volunteers a lot of times need to feel the love as well. And I think a lot of times organizations appreciate the work that the volunteers are doing, but it's not really articulated. And I think just like our staff needs a pat on the back, I think many times volunteers need that same pat on the back, and it could help them and inspire them a little more. So just some of my thoughts there. Here's another really good question. Do companies have a responsibility to provide a all-for-one policy regarding working from home, or can employers use flexibility and work with individuals on a one-on-one basis? Additionally, do these protocols or policies need to be made public?
Those are some very good questions, and those are questions that I tackle all the time because I look at this in part from the legal side of things. So the quickest way you can deal with an employment discrimination claim is by differentiating in your policies between certain workers. So I'm very keen on let's have a consistent rule, whether that does take into account, let's say, employees with disabilities or maybe with issues dealing with COVID-19 and they get some additional flexibility to work from home, or whether the policy is made available to everybody equally and people can choose how they would like to use it. Because if you have an inconsistent application of your policy, then certain people are going to be left out, and that can lead to things like discrimination claims. So I certainly recommend some consistency. And yes, it should be made public to your employees, your stance on this, because if you're hiding the ball to your employees, like we need to talk about trust here, and employees need to trust you, and transparency in my mind is like the number one thing right now, because employees are experiencing anxiety in a number of different ways for a number of different reasons, and employers need to be transparent about policy making, what's in the pipeline, what to expect, things like that. So if you want to build trust and you want to engage with your employees, have a consistent policy and make it publicly available. Not publicly available, but available to your employees.
And I would add a little bit to that because every organization is vastly different. So at World, we have over 140 different offices, right? And so some offices can support people from working from home and some can't. So while I might have an overarching policy that it can be considered And that's what I will do, because I'll consider on a case-by-case basis. We also have a lot of people right now that are tending to their families for COVID reasons, or they're afraid to go into the workforce because they have somebody senior at home. So I will draft an individual case-by-case overall program for them. The overarching for us today at World is that we are willing to offer flexibility on a case-by-case basis. So yes, it's a similar plan for everybody, but every office is a little different. We do have to be mindful of that.
Next question is, are there any creative strategies when it comes to actually paying for benefits that companies can institute that they may not know about? You seeing anything creative?
Okay. For paying, I'm sorry, Rachel, could you say that again? For paying for benefits?
Yeah, are there any creative strategies when it comes to actually paying for benefits that companies can institute that may not be known of? So one of the things that I've been really talking to clients about is this whole idea is fair really being equal? And when I say that, payroll deductions on employee benefits, typically everyone pays the same amount depending on their plan that they choose. And what we've been doing is analyzing what does that mean to the average employee. So an employee who's being payroll deducted, let's say $100 on their insurance, for the same plan that if they make $40,000 a year and the employee, another staff member might make $100,000 a year, they're using 3% of their income to pay for their benefits, where the higher earners are maybe using 1% of their income. What are you seeing out there in terms of changing payroll deductions and maybe being more sensitive and looking at income-based payroll deductions so that we can equalize the benefits within the organization? Are you, Diane?
Yeah, and that's a challenge. And that's actually considered, sometimes people look at it as a cafeteria plan, not the real cafeteria plan from a legal standpoint, but they look at it as a cafeteria. I've explored that and have found that it's not always accretive. What I prefer to look at is the high deductible health plans as it relates to an employer contributing to that plan as a supplemental to support, because what you'll often find is that certain people go into high deductible health plans when they really understand it and the complexities of it. It's very beneficial for the employee if they're utilizing the health savings account. What, as an organization, we are looking at right now is, so this is very timely because we're in open renewals, is contributions from the company into the high deductible health plan HSA. And that is really supportive to help our employees reduce some of their costs. It also benefits the organization because the cost is less in most plans than a normal POS plan would be, or PPO plan, whatever plans you offer. So that is one avenue that we have absolutely found to help support our employees, is that contribution. It drives traffic in that direction. Employees like it. It's accretive. They can also save money, and then they begin to learn. And this is about educating our employees on how to utilize a high deductible health plan HSA, because then they save money and it grows tax-free. So those are some of the avenues that we're looking at organizationally to support. And then also seeing where we can offer more employer-paid benefit plans and have the burden fall a little bit more on the company than the employee.
Adam, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, no, I mean, Diane took the words out of my mouth. I think it just boils down to, just being cognizant that you have different income earners within your organization, and to try and figure out plans that are suitable and affordable for your employees. There's a number of different ways you can do that. I think, Rachel, both you and Diane identified the two most common ways we see. So yeah, I mean, I'm always open for more creative ideas, but it really just boils down to offering a number of different ways so that everybody can participate in the plans and have affordable healthcare.
Well, today has been,
Question.
oh, we have one more question?
We have
Okay.
a question in the Q&A. This one's for Adam. How does the government have the legal capacity to mandate a vaccine? And I think this is appropriate to end on a vaccine question, since this is on everyone's mind.
Okay, so they have the legal right. The capacity is a different question, because as I alluded to before, OSHA only has so many employees and only has so many resources. They can't knock on every single door in America to see if every company is in compliance. So that's why we're going to see some of these harsher penalties so that everybody feels compelled to comply with these mandates and avoid these potential penalties. But the reality is OSHA is not going to make its way around to every company. You know, that's why, I mean, we see it today in other applications where you may have, you know, hazardous workplaces where people are getting injured or there's unsafe conditions, and not, you know, employees may complain about that, but OSHA doesn't always get around to that. So it's it is a capacity issue. That's not to say if you talk to someone like me, I'm going to say, hey, they won't get to your company. I'm certainly going to recommend that you comply with the laws. Yeah, I mean, the reality is they're not going to have the resources to get around to every company.
And with that, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating. It's been an incredible session. For our guests that were listening, take a look at your employee handbook, take a look at your benefit structure, take a look at your policies, take a look at your management team, your education. This is a time, we're in changing times, and every single day we're experiencing new parts of a post-COVID work environment. And we will bring more of these type of webinars out there to help our clients, to help our community really manage through this. And I really feel I must thank Jacqueline Sapoznik for putting the session together, inviting the guests. We're very proud of our affiliation with our community. And we're very proud of the fact that now we're part of the World family and World Insurance. And you will be learning a lot more about World in the coming months. And Erin, you were fantastic. Diane, I appreciated all your wisdom. Adam, as always, you were wonderful. So have a wonderful day, everybody. If anyone has any questions or anything else that maybe we could not get to, please feel free to email me and I will get them out to our guests. We also have recorded this session, so you will be receiving a recording. Please feel free to share that. And happy Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.